You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Hecho, Mano. This episode is Leia Zumbro, a jeweler from St. Louis. Leia shows her work at Hecho, Mano and was in town in Santa Fe for the Smitten Forum. If you're in Chicago in November, you can also find her work at the Sofa Art Fair. She'll be showing with Pistachio's Gallery. This Friday, September 27th, is the opening of Funko Roasto. And I have a bunch of stories to tell you about what that means, and everyone will get a different one. This show features jewelry by Zachary Lechtenberg and ceramics by Will Rimmel. And the opening is 6 to 8 p.m. Zach is known for inventing Matt Groening-inspired creatures and enameling them in Champlavet jewelry. It's a really wonderful process and creates some fantastic pieces, mostly brooches, a few necklaces, and then creates laser-cut boxes to display the work in on the wall. And Will makes ceramic figures, exploring the idea of the freak show to question what normal means and how we view ourselves. Both of their works fuse pop culture and contemporary craft in a really fantastic and fun way. The show's over 50 pieces, and it will be on view through October 19th. And if you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and review A Creative Excuse. Thanks for listening. So it's already recording.
Oh, wow.
So we're just...
we're just running into it?
Just running right into it. You know, it's funny because, I didn't really find any, press or interviews or anything online, so I'm coming in totally blind.
Oh, on me?
Yeah. Which is great because it's it really just, allowed us to go wherever we want. I did an interview yesterday with Les LeFair.
Oh, did you?
He is. I probably asked 3 questions, and
that's all you could get.
We talked for an hour.
Oh yeah.
We talked. By we talked, I mean he talked for an hour. It was great.
Yes, I had dinner with him at Bob and Alita's.
Yeah.
The night we got in, and it was you have to plan strategically on how to make conversation with Les. You have to jump
and especially with those two, I'm sure they're just so tight.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But Bob is definitely more of a listener.
He was definitely that night. He was interested in catching up and seeing how everybody was. Just excited.
Yeah. So that was really fun yesterday. He's, as a podcast guest, it's just go, man, just go.
Right. Just go. Just take it.
Yeah. It's funny. I watched, you had a little news clip.
Oh my gosh, you found that. I was like, can we hide that deep within the internet?
Oh,
which I've never even watched it.
Newsy things are so weird.
They are so weird.
I did one a couple of years ago, and I don't know. It's they have so little time to prepare for anything, so they basically know nothing about you.
Yeah.
You know, and I was watching her kind of struggle. I was jewelry.
I know she was has never seen handmade jewelry before. She's probably buying things from the mall, like most people.
Yeah. So
she was just I don't know what to say. Why don't you fill this in?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's probably how they have to do it. It's okay. So just tell me about this thing I'm seeing right here.
Just go ahead and go.
Right.
Which I'm not the biggest expert at, for sure.
Yeah.
Talking about my work, for sure. So this is probably also why you have not found a lot of press, because I kind of refuse a lot. That's a giant moth?
That is a hummingbird moth, yeah.
Is that what that is? It's
beautiful. They've been coming in lately. Is that you?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
They've been coming in lately, and I've been taking them out every night. And
they come back
keep
in?
Coming back in.
You must have a hole?
I guess, something like that. But when we first moved here, you'll see them around, and if you're not looking super close, they look like hummingbirds because their wings move so fast.
Yeah, and they have that big fat body.
Yeah, right.
They're really cool.
So, I'll get him out a little later.
Later. I love this space. It's so beautiful.
Thanks.
It seems like very quintessentially Santa Fe.
It is, and I'm really somebody that loves playing with opposites and polarities. And so I like taking a space that's old. It's at least 100 years old, and doing something contemporary in it. I love playing with color and black and white. I love playing with, I guess I'm not playing with handmade and mechanical. It's all handmade. But I love taking.
Well, it does have a modern twist to it. It's very the hewn logs on the ceiling. And then, the brand new lighting and the skylights and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a nice juxtaposition.
Yeah, it's been nice to be in here.
What a score to get this space.
For real. It was such a serendipitous thing. I was working at a cafe in between jobs, and someone overheard me that I was looking for a space. The guy who was in here before, he was just at the cafe, and he's like, "Well, I'm moving out." So
what was it before?
It was a gallery.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he was going to focus on another aspect of his business that was more like in hotels. He places art in hotels. So he just said, "Hey, I'm moving out."
Sweet.
Yeah, and the rent's really good for Canyon, especially.
That's awesome.
And I love how small it is and how manageable it feels.
Very intimate. Yes.
FNC it's 10,000 square feet, so it's a lot to program all the time.
Yes.
And so here it's just everything's in front of me.
Yes.
So
there's little moments happening. I love how you have the display in the windows, so people are seeing stuff from the street already. Yeah. They know kind of what's happening in here.
Yeah, and that acts as almost like a filter too, right? There's plenty of people that come in that aren't interested and they just kind of do a quick spin, but the window tells you what you might get, and it draws the right people in.
Yes.
So that's really good.
That is good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you grew up in St. Louis?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm born and raised.
Born and raised in St. Louis.
In St. Louis.
And you're still there.
Yes. I left for a bit. I went to grad school in North Carolina, and I was there 2.5 years. And
ECU?
ECU. Yeah. ECU with Bob and Linda Darty and Misa Kerr and Tim Lejeune. Yeah. So that was good. And then my dad also lived in Arizona when I was in junior high age, so I spent 11 years coming and visiting the Southwest area.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
where in Arizona?
Phoenix.
Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah.
Hot town.
Definitely. Hot and dry.
Yeah.
Kind of like an oven. Yes. So.
And so St. Louis, it's was that kind of your only time for long periods of time living away? Was in Eastern Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I lived across the river in Illinois, but it's pretty much the same area. You can get home easy. But yeah, that was my only time leaving. I really wanted to go away for school, and I didn't do it in undergrad. I went to Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, right across the river, and studied with Paulette Myers, who is just a lovely person and an amazing maker. But I was excited to get out and get away, and so I ended up studying abroad with Linda Darty in Italy my second semester, first year. So I was like, I need to go all the way out. I need to get out of town and really just go for it, because I wanted that grad school experience of leaving and kind of remaking yourself. And I feel like sometimes you can't always do that in the town that you grew up in, because it's these people know you as a certain way, and it kind of gives you that space when you go somewhere else to reinvent yourself and be who am I? What am I doing? And you kind of sort it out for yourself, and then you can come back home and be this is who I am. And kind of growing up. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. It's such I've moved around so much in my life. And
where are you originally from?
Well, I was born in Oklahoma, lived there for 6 months. So I left when I was a baby.
Never mind.
Alaska for 7 years.
Wow.
Seattle for 8 years.
Okay.
Houston for 12 years.
Oh my gosh.
And then moved here in 2008.
What led you around the country?
It was a complicated family situation. My parents split when I was 6-ish, and then Mom and I moved to Seattle.
Cool.
And then we moved to Houston, in part because her parents were getting older, and she wanted to be closer to them. I think it's it's challenging as a single mother, you know, to figure out like, and I'm sure my mom's listening. Hi, you know, it's, you know, to figure out not only like what's best in the situation for my child, but like how do I take care of myself at the same time? And
that
then
balance is hard to strike.
Yeah, and then if you're living away from your parents too, and you want to be close to them, so it's like it's a lot of variables to juggle. And personally, I'm super grateful for all those different experiences. It was awesome to be able to kind of be flexible. Like I think it instilled in me a sense of flexibility.
Yes.
And being able to adapt to a lot of different circumstances.
Totally.
Yeah.
And not being scared to like move and go someplace new. And
it's exciting to me now. I love starting new things.
Yes.
Like almost to a fault, maybe.
Yes. I think some people are like, oh, I can't leave. This my home, you know, kind of defines me. You know?
Do you feel that way about St. Louis?
No, not really. And I think also some of that has to do with, you know, my parents split when I was young too, so it was like a lot of moving around, and then my dad settled in Arizona, and we traveled tons, and now I travel tons. You know, I'm gone like a week, a month on average, and so I really feel like I kind of take myself with me. I don't exist only in my home, and I feel like that travel kind of brings that out in people too, and some people that don't leave their hometown, I feel like that's harder. I don't know. Yeah,
that's a great balance though, to like be able to, you know, go to a lot of different places, but always have that kind of route to come back to. I mean, I'm sure it makes it a lot easier to travel when you have like that familiarity to come back to.
My home, my cats, my husband.
And do you enjoy that travel aspect of it, like being able to go out?
I do. I really do. Sometimes I get really exhausted. I get travel fatigue, and I'm like, I don't want to pack my suitcase. I don't want to go again. But then I get out on the road and I'm fine. You know, I'm just like. But sometimes it is tiring when it's like more like this month has been trying, because it's been like every weekend I'm off to a different place. So I'm excited to have some time this fall to like simmer at home and think about experiences and make new things. Right. When you have that space to make new things, that's so important. But sometimes as a maker, really trying to like travel around and do these shows, it kind of gets hard to make that mental space. Right. You're just really trying to like, where do I eat dinner next? And like, I need to wash my clothes. I need to restock my, my goods, Yeah.
I mean, I think like for me and just the creative process that I enter into with this, like it really takes having just the spaciousness of time, like where there's not a schedule or an agenda or a lot going on. And it's interesting. I think like as a culture, like we always are trying to look busy, like with phones or whatever, and I think it fill the time, and I think it really takes away from this, what I being bored, which I think can be so helpful, because it's like I remember being a kid or whatever, and it's like, what am I going to do? Oh, well, we're just going to go run around outside and like
your imagination
throw
takes
sticks
over.
at each other.
Yes. We were always ponies. We had to be ponies when we were. But I mean, when you don't have that space to let your imagination run wild, I mean, like boredom is not a bad thing,
right?
Because your brain's like, okay, let me find an awesome way to fill this time and space and create something new. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that is something within our society today that's not happening. We have like always visually, like all these images coming at us. Our phones are totally connected to us. I mean, I do it too. Like I have a spare moment and I'm looking at Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And I'm like, what am I doing? Maybe I should just read a book or hang out and just think about things.
Yeah. No, it's really something that I have to consciously practice. Like, I don't need to pick it up. How long? When was the last time I picked it up?
Yes.
Oh, 2 minutes ago? No,
yeah,
you really
exactly,
don't.
Exactly.
You really don't.
Yeah, that's why I bought a watch, because I was like looking at my phone to be like, look at the time.
Yeah,
And then I was like, I'm just like on social media now, you know, like, or looking at my email for the 10th time.
It's so weird.
Hour.
We have to develop these strategies, like getting a watch to keep it from looking at the phone. It's so
I know.
funny.
You're like, okay, gotta trick yourself.
Seriously.
And have you heard of the apps where they you download them and then they track your time on whatever apps, and you're like, oh my god. I haven't done that because I'm kind of scared. They'll be like 4 million days on Instagram.
There's one. I think it's built into the Apple.
Is it really? I don't have Apple.
Yeah,
That's maybe the difference. I don't know if Android does.
Yeah.
I'm not really good with the technology.
Yeah.
I've just heard of things.
Yeah, and I've recently I deleted my personal Instagram account. Not deleted, but I've just I'm not using it anymore. And because I'm running the Instagram for this thing, and it's actually taking more attention that I was putting into my personal thing.
Oh, totally.
And I just don't I don't want to have to worry about two things. And if somebody wants to wants to see pictures of my cats, sorry, Eric. I've been actually texting him pictures of my cats because he was like, where am I going to get cat pictures?
I need to be fulfilled.
I mean, it's the internet. Come on. There's a billion cat pictures.
Yeah. There's tons of Instagram cat opportunities
Seriously.
that you can plug into.
Yeah.
No, I only have one Instagram, and I kind of do a little bit of personal, just touches, and mostly professional, which I'm not very good at. People are like, oh, you need to post every day, and you need to do stories, and you need to do videos, and there's a part of me that just I know I need to do that, and I know people like that, but I also feel just exhausted by the idea of trying to fill this and trying to put myself out there and show myself in a certain light, that professional light. It's being on all the time.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just making that in my head. Maybe worse than it is, you know?
It's attention. I think I think we have a finite amount of attention to give.
Yeah.
And I wonder, you hear it's something you have to do. And maybe to a certain extent now that's true, but I wonder about that a lot, because I get so many people come in and buy that have just never heard of me before, that this is their first time in Santa Fe. I mean, I think if you're out there in public, it's maybe not quite as necessary.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out there in a public space where people can kind of stumble upon you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I mean,
You're not, but I mean, this store, you have a storefront.
Yeah.
So that's something, you're on Canyon Road, right?
Yeah.
And it's you're not trying to create this web presence so much. You have a brick and mortar. And I feel for artists that are traveling around like myself, I have a website, and I'm trying to, I would like to develop more of a online presence, but I guess I need to be online.
Yeah, it's a really tricky situation because it's and I think it falls into the whole thing about artists needing to make art, and artists are being asked to do so much more, in terms of being their own marketing person, and it's it takes away from your time in the studio.
Yeah, so you have to balance that.
Yeah.
What do you want to... What's most important right now? And I've heard... There's, tricks that I've heard people say, where you, sit down for an hour out of your week and take all of your photos, and you can plan the posts and things like that. And that all just takes forethought and effort. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you're out, at an event or something, and something's relevant to your work, you want to capture it and put it out there, so that can sometimes go out the window.
Yep. You're like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you seem to be somebody that's pretty good at balancing. From the outside, it doesn't I wouldn't have gotten that it was an issue for you at all.
Oh, really?
So,
okay. Yeah. I guess if you look at the timing of my posts, maybe you're like, oh man, that's once a month that she's posting.
Interesting. Yeah. See, I wonder how many people really actually pay attention to that.
I guess that's true. Yeah. It's people don't really realize. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like something that I like try to move towards, but it's, you know, it's not something that I'm super concerned with. I just love, I want to make work. I want to make new work. And, you know, I've hired somebody and I have help in my studio so I can try to not get swallowed up by just keeping up with the Joneses. And, you know, like emailing and accounting and all of those things that really take up your time but are so important, you know, like you have to make space for making, actually.
Right.
So. Yeah.
I mean, and you're in a lot of galleries and you do a lot of shows. And, you know, so I sometimes think about like how that balance point between, you know, getting the work out there. And I think as jewelers, like in that sort of production mode versus like getting in and doing something new. Is that something that is a struggle or a balance? Is it easy?
Oh, yeah.
How does that go for you?
Even though I have a studio assistant, a lot of the year I'm just kind of like traveling and I'm making like new little like variances on what I'm making, and sometimes I'll like bust out a new piece in a short span of time, but a lot of my new work kind of comes in those quieter months where I'm not just go, and I'm kind of caught up on a lot of other things. Like before I came for this trip, you know, I caught up on all my accounting, and I'm getting ready to go to New York now, so I'm really trying to like get myself prepped for that, and then after that, it's kind of like, okay, now I can go back and have that space to make new pieces. Yeah, and a lot of my designing and kind of figuring things out is I'm not super fast at that. So I really need to have time. I can't like, okay, I'm going to make 10 new pieces this week, you know, before this show. Like, no, that's not happening. Like reality check, you know, like I can get a lot of production work done. You know, I can really smash some things, but that's like when you know what's ahead of you and you're not like kind of forging a new path. You know, I have my recipe book of my production work so I can reproduce those things in the same kind of way. So that helps, you know, because you can sit down at the bench and have a game plan and, you know, make an inventory list. And the type A part of me just like kind of loves that organization and being able to come in and be able to be like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. And then there's also that artist part of me that doesn't get to do that all the time, but gets to sit down and be like, okay, what's happening? I know like loosely what I want to make. I want to make, you know, this really graphic necklace, or, you know, I want to play around with some gold, you know, like there's just,
So it sounds like you're able to kind of go in and out of those two modes fairly easily, smoothly?
No, I think it's like I kind of fight. I get caught on that train of like, okay, I'm going to make really fast. I got to get all this done. And then I'm going to go here. And then this is happening. And like to slow yourself down, I wish I was better at it. I really do wish I was better at it. I'm like, I've been meaning to, I bought some new tools and I want to play, but I feel like I almost need like a whole week to give myself that space, and like nothing's going on in the studio, you know, like I can just be there like for like, what am I doing? You know, where am I going? You know, sometimes just like having an hour or two is not enough to really
for sure.
get into that zone and be creative.
And you can do that, right? Like it probably just takes, you have to plan your week like, okay, next month I'm going to take this week.
Yes, I do. I know. It's like, best laid plans. I should definitely be better about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so we get into the rhythm of what the world demands, and it's hard to break out of that because we have to make a living to be in this world, you know, and that's, you know, been something that I've had to learn over the past, you know, 11 odd years working in galleries. Is like, if I'm not paying the bills, I'm not going to keep the doors open. But if I'm not excited about the work, I'm not going to keep the doors open.
You're right.
You know?
There is that balance. Like, you start to feel like it's just drudgery. You're like, I'm a little baby handmade factory, you know, just making the same things over and over. And I feel like customers, people that are looking at my jewelry can tell when I'm not excited. Because when I go to a show and I have like a new piece, people gravitate towards that piece. It's the most interesting thing, because I think they feel that energy that you're excited about something, and there's something new happening within that, and it's really interesting that people, that's is the tendency.
Yeah. I think we really have to retrain ourselves, because I think we're taught to like to get into that mechanicalness. That's what our economy thrives on. And it's like, and I think that the sort of reinforcements that we get from, even just like advertising out in the world, it's just like, be that machine, and get in that groove. And I think I've had to retrain myself, and I'm continuing to do it, in order to just like bust out of that groove, that just like really turns us into machines, And I think to a certain degree we have to go there just to make a living, but it's like, I don't know, I think our spirits really long for like that free time and just like being able to get in there. And that for better or for worse, we've got to schedule it. We just have to like make the discipline to do it.
It doesn't feel it's spontaneous to have, but you have to schedule yourself that playtime. That's totally true.
For sure.
And it's really interesting kind of coming from more of an academic art background, and being in grad school and having all this time to make whatever you want.
Right.
And you don't even know what you want to make, and you're like, you could go any direction. The world is your oyster. And then kind of going into this production jewelry life, and it's a business, and you have to kind of retrain your brain into that and not get stuck.
Yeah. There's a certain level, I think, of like acceptance of it, like that for me, that like I've had to, I come from like, playing in like punk rock bands and being a little punk kid and like, fighting against society, which is important. I think that we have to do that too. But just for my own sanity and happiness, like being able to just accept the reality of the world as it is, not in the sense of succumbing to it, but just like, okay, this is the way it is, and that's fine. And I can move through that and also, do something else too.
You can plan for that, and you can see how the world is laid out in our society, but then you can also make that shift and try to plan for what you want out of your life, like a little bit more quiet, a little bit more time to do whatever you want. And I feel like I'm constantly thinking about that and constantly kind of struggling with that, like, what do I want my life to be shaped like? And I feel like a lot of my friends, and my husband included, they have like 9 to 5 more office-y jobs, and their lives are very much shaped like that. They have this rhythm that is very mechanical, and I think they feel kind of chafed by that. And so I feel like it's almost like our job as, not like artists, but I feel like we have that opportunity because we can shape our lives in whichever way we want. You could get up and go ride your bike and have a coffee with a friend, and then come in and have your day here, and then go home and like cook dinner and have friends over, and just like, how do you want your life to be shaped, and do you want to fit travel in? Is that important to you? And just like constantly thinking about that and not getting caught up in just the day-to-day and just making money, and just like, okay, I need to keep the doors open, because there is that like primal part of your brain that takes over, especially when you're like, there's no safety net, and you're like floating by yourself, and you're like, okay, I have to do this, like I have to survive. And it becomes like, if you let that kind of take over, then it really takes all of the joy out of the play and the making that you're doing, and it's just like, you have to have that balance of like, okay, where am I? What's happening?
It's hard for me to close 2 days a week. Like, it is, because I think about like, there's gonna be people walking around the street on Monday.
There's always opportunity.
There's always people walking around the street, and so for me to like be able to like take Monday and just sit on the couch and read has been a big deal for me.
It's so important though, because you have to, like, I keep seeing this, one of those sayings, like, you have to like refill your own cup before you fill others. And it's so true. It's like, oh man, you have to recharge. And I also kind of stink at that. Like I'll get home from traveling and I'm like, okay, I'm into the studio and I'm just exhausted and I'm running on fumes and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't know what's happening. Like there's like nothing really happens that day. You like move some papers around and like you're like, okay, this is it. But yeah.
You want any more?
No, I'm okay, thank you. Yeah. It's really interesting that I think it's part of our society too, how like break time is not okay. You have to be working really hard. We have to be achieving. And I think there's like studies out there there's definitely studies out there that are saying that we're not as productive as we think we are because we're not giving ourselves that time to recharge. I read this book. It's called like Living Danishly, I think. It's written by a British.
It's a good title.
Yeah. It's written by a British woman who moved to Denmark, and she kind of really assessed like her life before. She was writing for a magazine in London, and she was just like always working 24/7. And then she was trying to like start a family with her husband, and they weren't able to like make that happen. And then they moved to Denmark, and like they have shorter work hours, shorter work week. It's more about like your quality of life. Do you have any hobbies? Are you exercising? And it's just like, wow. If your society is kind of instilling in that in you, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
But it's so important. And
do you think part of that has to do with their social security systems?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you don't have to worry about getting sick.
That is a big part of the book, where it's just like they have this safety net. No matter who you are, you have a safety net. If you want to stop what you're doing and change gears, go back to school, your school's paid for. You have like 3/4 of your salary that you were making is still going to be paid to you, and you can just kind of stop and do whatever. And I think that's really cool. I would definitely pay like half of my income to be like, okay, I have this safety net, because I feel like that creates this quality of life that we don't have here in the States. You know, it's just like you're not worried about your health insurance, you're not worried about your job or your retirement. It's just kind of like it's all going to flow, and you just need to like, you know, make your life the best that you can with that. And I think that's easier. Yeah, for a lot of people.
That's a can of worms.
Yeah, let's maybe
right
not
now.
go down that. How much time do we have left?
I know, right? Like we could spend an hour on that.
Seriously.
One of the things I'm interested in is I've talked with most of the guests about like who have gone to school about how in general art schools don't really prepare you for actually being an artist in the world. Is that different at all in like metalsmithing jewelry type programs?
No, and that's something that it's really become apparent to me. The girl that I hired, Sarah O'Brien. Hi, Sarah. She's awesome, and she graduated from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, just like I did, SIUE. And that's a big topic of conversation, is that you're kind of coming out and you're not prepared. Like this academic art world is not preparing you for the actual business world. And how many people are going right back into that academic stream? Like not that many, a really small percentage. And it's kind of something, I'm here staying with Larissa Janiga and Larissa Garcia, and we're having conversations about this. You know, she's in that academic realm, and it's really just apparent that there's this whole business aspect missing. Like, how do you get a business license? How do you do your books? How do you find an accountant? You know, how do you strike that balance? What should be your financial balance? I've never had a business course, and I've really just learned on the fly. I worked for another artist for 6 years when I was an undergraduate, and that was super pivotal and important for me. And like, because you don't even know what this is shaped like. You don't know what the artist's life is shaped like if you don't ever see it. Like this traveling and, you know, kind of being like this gypsy carny that like sets up their tent in a new city and peddles your wares, and then you break down at the end of the weekend and you're off to the next place. And you don't understand what your possibilities are until you kind of see some of those. And I think that's something that the academic world is not really willing to divulge or really put importance on, which I feel like is such a shame, because there's so many artists out there. The ones that are, you either get a job teaching, and there's a few people that get those jobs really easily, and then some people are traveling around for a decade, from like just traveling around university to university, covering other teachers that are taking their sabbatical until they finally have enough experience on their resume to look juicy enough for a university. And I did teach my first semester out of school. I kind of helped my friend do a sabbatical and take some stone setting classes for him. And I covered him at a community college, and it was awful. It was just, I was working way more hours than what they were paying me for. And it was just like, it overtook my life for, 3 or 4 months. And then I was just like, wow, I just traded all of that for $9,000 and, no health and no anything, like there was no support within that structure. And I feel like I have to say, I feel like some people have their blinders on to that, and it's a shame, because it's like, what are you preparing your students for? Like, you should really be hooking your students up with like working for other artists, and there are some programs that do that. But I think you want to see like academia is not the only path for artists in school. And I feel like that's important to highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially artists that aren't doing work that's commercial, like that you can't sell. I have a friend that really nothing that he makes is like saleable unless you have like an entire room that you're going to devote to this installation.
Yes.
You know? And there's pathways for that to make a living doing that kind of work. And I think that it seems impossible. But yet, if you learn, like, how do you write a grant?
Yeah.
Right? Like.
Yes. Grant writing.
Yeah.
I think business classes for art majors would be amazing. That would be like leaps and bounds. Because I wish I would have taken a business class. I listen to a lot of books while I'm working, and I try to kind of give myself an education on what am I doing, how to manage money, because that's really important. If you don't have that 401k coming in, you're not getting your money matched by anybody. You need to put it away. Right. You need to be proactive. Like, how do I do this? And especially as a 20-something, you're not really thinking about that until you get into your 30s, and you're like, whoa, am I ever going to retire? And am I ever going to have a different life? Yeah. And how do I shape that life? And what do I want it to look like? Yeah. But I think business courses, would be super important for any art major. I mean, like, you're talking about somebody that's doing like more installation work, like get them connected with a museum, like get them connected with local galleries and see kind of what that circuit looks like. It's a whole different animal. But business classes, top to bottom, you have to learn how to manage your own money, your own self. My wife went to massage school, and it was almost just like a given that they had a business class. That's awesome.
In there. Because I mean, I can't imagine like, doing so. And I guess it's different in the arts, right? I don't know. There's some weird like lone wolf mentality that's like, you should just be fueled by your pure creativity and the money will come, or you'll just be starving artist. That's It'll be romantic.
Oh, it's so romantic to be a starving artist. Or you just go get a job at a coffee shop and become a barista like everybody.
But it'll be worth it.
It'll be so worth it. You'll be a struggling, starving barista with, $50,000 in debt. It's just like, oh, that's so romantic. Like, no, that's not realistic. We gotta like retrain our society. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Are we really setting up our young people for success? Maybe not. Maybe not in our new society. We have different things that are important now, and there's not like, you can't come out of school and like, have a job that you have for 40 years and then retire, Yeah. That's not something of our generation.
The community college here had a gallery management program, and they were using the space next door to here as like a real sort of, incubator, like real life experience thing. So like
That's
the
awesome.
students would curate, the students ran the gallery.
That is so cool.
So it was like a real experience. They got the education in this sort of insulated, college environment.
Yeah.
But then like they had to come out and actually work at it.
That's awesome.
It was amazing. And then the governor cut the funding to the community college, and they had to cut the entire program. I know.
Oh,
but what a like beautiful experience
that
to
is such a
actually
cool experience.
learn on the job.
Yes. Yeah. It's so important. We need more of that.
Check the time.
I know.
We're good. Were your parents creative at all? Did you have siblings?
I do.
Yeah.
I have 2 sisters. I'm the middle child. My mom painted, which I don't think I've ever even seen any of her paintings, but I know she had oil paints. But she was always painting and drawing and encouraging us to do that as young kids.
Yeah.
I think there was always like a little flavor of art. I mean, like me and my younger sister were always making jewelry, like a lot of beaded jewelry. We had those like beaded looms, and we would buy beads and make different color combinations. I think also being in Phoenix was really inspirational. We traveled around to a lot of Indian reservations when we were kids, because it was like we were discovering this new state, and family would come in town and we're like, let's go to the Grand Canyon, let's go to this Hopi Indian reservation and like kind of see what Native American art was all about. And so that, I feel like that has undertones, especially coming back here. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize like some of like the graphic things that I'm doing is really related to what I saw as a kid. And like materials that I started out using are really kind of inspired by just seeing things around. But yeah, so there was a huge bead store I remember in Phoenix. It was just like rooms and rooms and rooms of just beads everywhere, and me and my younger sister would walk around and just drool over everything, and we would be able to get a few things and then put beads together. I mean, we were just always making things.
Yeah.
And then we learned how to knit, and then it was just like I think I'm just like one of those people that's not very good at sitting still. Like even when I'm watching a movie or something, I'm like, okay, I need to be doing something else. Like I need to be like productively doing something, which is tiresome. But yeah. But yeah, I just like, okay, let's make this and let's do this. And my parents definitely encouraged that. And I don't know, I guess it's really interesting because my dad was a computer programmer for Boeing. And my older sister's a banker, and my younger sister works in the food industry, and my mom's a nurse, or a retired nurse. And so, yeah, there's not like a whole lot of creativity, but it's kind of always in the background. My grandmother was a quilter too, so I have like all of these beautiful handmade, hand-embroidered quilts, and it is part of just like the family, like yeah. So
but it sounds like you have like that thread of jewelry making from a young kid.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if it was like popular when I was a kid, like all the embroidery thread, like doing like the knots and the friendship bracelets, and then we kind of just like kept going with that, like adorning yourself, and like learning how to do that, and color combinations and shapes and sizes and wearability, and you're thinking about those things at a young age. I mean, like my sister Dana and I were always like making things and like, okay, look at this color combination. Oh, look at this. And just having so much fun doing that during the summers, for sure.
Yeah. Did you have a sense of like wanting to do that as a career?
No.
When did that come in? In high school? Or?
Yeah. So Craft Alliance, if you've heard of that, in St. Louis, it's more of like a community craft school, and you can come in and take ceramics, glass bead making, weaving, all kinds of things, and also metalsmithing. And so I remember I started working, and I was saving my money, and I was looking at all their classes because we had ceramics at school, and my stepmom was a potter when I was growing up. So when I would go to Arizona, I was learning how to throw pots.
Nice.
And it was just an awesome thing. But yeah, so I was like, well, what class do I want to take? Well, I've already kind of have like a ceramics base. And I was like, metalsmithing sounds so cool. And I took this class, and I was hooked, like immediately. I still have some of the pieces that I've made my first class. Nice. And I'm still friends with my first teacher, Mary Ellen Brooks Taylor, and she really encouraged me. She was like, you can do this for a living. You can go to school for this. And I was like, what?
That's so awesome.
You know, it's like you don't even know. And when you tell people, oh, yeah, I am majored in metalsmithing, they're like, that's a thing, you know, and that's how I was. I was like totally outside of this network. So I went into this art school really, went into Craft Alliance really like hungry for something else. And then I just kind of fell into metalsmithing. And I think that history of like working with my hands and making things to adorn yourself with really came in strong. And I continued with it. And so I kind of had this like, I went to a couple schools for undergrad, and I kind of like made a weird path, but I got back to metals and earned my undergraduate. But yeah, I didn't realize that was something that I could do. And I remember being on the internet, like the dial-up internet, and being like, I need to find more art for my life. And I was just like Google searching or whatever searching, Yahoo. I don't even know what I used back then. And like looking and like, what is this? Craft Alliance? Okay, cool. And I was in this city. It's in this city, and my mom was like terrified. I was like, I'm gonna go down there. I'm like 16. I'm like, I'm gonna drive into the city, and my mom's like, no. But I was like, I'm doing it, Mom, and it was good. It was good. Yeah. So that's kind of where it started, and I was like, and I think growing up with a dad, my dad was, he worked for Boeing, he worked for Motorola. He was like a big shot computer programmer, and that consumed him. He was all about his work, and that's what his life was shaped like. And he would come home and read code for longer and do things like that. And I think from a young age I realized I didn't want my life to be shaped like that. And so it's just like, well, what do I want to do? And like existing in this space where you're making stuff and letting your imagination take over, and you have space for that in your life, and you're not just like cranking things out to make money. But I am doing that in a way.
Well, I mean,
stuff that you want to make. So.
Yeah, I hear you. But I mean, I think that's also, maybe that's something that you can kind of keep coming back to bring balance into your work, right? Is that recognition maybe that you saw is like, oh, I don't quite want that.
Yeah.
But it's funny how we always kind of seem to go back to mirroring our parents. While you were talking, I was thinking about my dad was the same way. And he managed hotels, and it just totally consumed him.
Yes.
And I see so much of like my work ethic and just like desire to be kind of defined by my work, even though I don't want to be defined by my work. I just do it. That's what I do. And that struggle of like not wanting to be defined by my work, yet constantly putting myself in the position to do it. And I find that it's just we can't get away from our parents.
I know. That's true. I mean, like, honestly, like sometimes I work more than 40 hours a week, especially when I'm doing a show, you know, that's like 12-hour days, 14-hour days. And not all of it is like totally active, but you're interacting with people and other artists, and it's like you're on, you know, and it's like, okay, it's like, what do you do here? Okay, what about this show? And like, let's talk about this and have these conversations. But yeah. Or like I come home and I've been working and I'm like, I got to work on my website or edit photos or do these things. And it feels more than a 40-hour work week, and you kind of feel like a crazy person, and it kind of consumes you, especially when you're working towards like a large goal or a show or something. I find that like that kind of, and like all I talk about is like work. And my husband's like, oh yes, hello. Can we talk about something else, please? I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean, that's like one of the great things about having a 9-to-5, you know, or when you're working for somebody else.
Yes.
You know, it's easier to leave the work on the table, you know, where you're at, and just go home and like, okay, I'm at home now.
Yes. I've totally like, sometimes I fantasize about that. I'm like, oh man, it would be so awesome to just like be able to come home and not think about this and have that kind of like safety net, and maybe I should go do that. And then I'm like, wait, no, that's maybe not what I want to do. That's not why I came here, you know. That's not why I got on this path. And you have to like reinvigorate and realize, you know, where you're at and where you want to be.
Totally.
Yeah, constant.
Yeah, one of the things that really hit me hard when I left FNC, like the difference between having a steady paycheck and like having to basically make your own money through your own business, in a sense, there's no difference. You could lose your job anytime.
Yes.
And this sort of paycheck every 2 weeks is kind of an illusion. But it's like a really convincing one because it comes like right on time. You know, if you know,
every Friday you're like, or every other Friday.
And that's something that I've had to remind myself, doing this, where it feels more uncertain, is that it's in a sense it's very similar. Anything can happen anytime. And
it's really it's I feel like you're gambling. I talk to some of my friends, I'll call them after a show and I'm like, I had a really good show, or I bombed. I totally bombed. And like my friends, my 9-to-5 friends are like, how was the show? And I'm like, oof. But then you never know what's going to come around the corner. And I feel like there's more opportunity here, like putting yourself out there online. You could get an online order. You could get somebody contacting you to be a part of a show. Like you contacted me, like totally out of the blue. And I was like, who's this dude? Like, what's happening? And I was like, okay. And you wanted to talk on the phone. And I was like, all right, he seems like really serious and very genuine about what he's doing. And I saw your website and like what you had going on. And I was like, yes, I want to be a part of this. This has the right vibe for me. And you just never know, and it's just like, where is today going to lead you? And I think there's something like, the adventure seeking side of me is very excited about that. And it's like it's like a gamble. You're like rolling the dice every day. What's going to happen? You could totally lose all of your winnings, or you could just like hit the jackpot. And it's just like, you get a call, oh, I'm off the wait list. Oh, I'm going to go. Oh my gosh. And it's just like, whoa. It's like, there's something like very addicting about it, which I feel like the mundaneness of having a 9-to-5, like you're going to go to work.
Yeah, sure.
You're going to do certain things, and then you're going to get that paycheck.
Yeah. I think there's that urgency for me is really fueling, like that if I don't do it, it's not going to happen.
Yes.
And that's a huge motivator for me. And I do much better work when I'm on the hook. Oh yeah. I do way better work.
Absolutely. Like, well, if you drop the ball, nobody's going to pick it up.
That's right.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, cool. So one of the things that I always ask people is if there's like a piece of art that you can remember that changed your trajectory, inspired you. You already mentioned this person, because sometimes they say, oh, it could be a person or a class or something like that, but it sounds like you shared that one with the Art Craft Alliance.
Yes.
But is there a specific artwork that you can think of that either made you think about creativity or art in a different way, or made you think about jewelry making in a different way, or even maybe not even a specific piece of art, but it could have been an artist where like their body of work was like, oh, you can do that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. My family's from San Antonio, and we went home with my mom, and I went to the San Antonio Museum of Art, and there was this big exhibition. I can't remember the guy's name. It's this silver production company that was in Mexico on the border, like around the turn of the century, like 1930s, and they were making these beautiful silver pieces, and like people are buying them on eBay now, and the name is just escaping me. It's going to drive me nuts. But I remember seeing this exhibition and walking around, and this was before, I think I had already had the metalsmithing class, or maybe I hadn't. I can't remember. But I remember I bought the book, and I still have the book, and it's just like all of this beautiful chased and reposade sterling silver, like giant cuffs, and like really like graphic, and like kind of riffing off of some of the designs that you see in Native American Southwest jewelry, like the squash blossom necklace, and like those Navajo pearls, those like kind of hollow forms, and just like looking at this and like, wow, metal can do this, and people adorning themselves with these like crazy like dragon heads, like very Mayan, Aztec looking kind of designs, and you're just like, wow. And I remember buying that book and being like, this is amazing. Like, this is like the stuff that you just dream up. Like, how can you make your living off of your dreams? Just how do you make that happen?
Yeah. So like the boldness of it, and like how you can adorn yourself with something that's so big and bold and creative.
Yes. Which my jewelry's not like super crazy big or bold, but just the idea of like being able to design whatever you want, and people will come and love it. You know, somebody's gonna love it.
Yeah.
You know, Bob, it was so funny. I always think this to myself when I'm really being hard on myself in the studio. You make something. I used to beat myself up, and I was such a slow maker in grad school, and Bob would come by. He was like, everybody's gonna make dogs. You just gotta keep going, and somebody will buy your dog. Don't go back. Don't look back. You know, like. So I just think of like you make like an ugly piece of jewelry, and you're like, oh, that's my dog, and you like put it out on the table, and you're like, no. But you just gotta keep rolling. You just gotta like, you can't get so tied up and like, oh, I'm always gonna make the most perfect, most beautiful, most wonderful piece, and it's always gonna be a great success. And like that's not true. That's not reality. And you just gotta make your dogs and get out there. I don't know how I got on this tangent, but
it's great. No, that's awesome. You gotta make your dogs.
You gotta make your dogs.
No, it's so
you gotta
true.
let your dogs roll.
It's so true, and I think there's a lot of pressure for artists to like make up the best piece every time.
Yeah. And if you don't, you're a failure, and I think that's crippling for a lot of artists. And for Bob Ebbendorf to stop by my bench and be like, so what? You made a dog. Just like keep going. Don't remake it. You can't make it perfect.
Yeah.
It's not. You can't come back from this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Everybody has these moments where you just like kind of fuck up.
Yeah.
And you just gotta keep going.
Fail better.
Yeah. Fail better next time.
Yeah.
You'll know how to do it because you already failed.
Right.
You already have a line of dogs behind you.
Right. That's cool. So I'm not quite sure when this is going to be released. Do you have any upcoming shows that if people want to find you?
I'm going to be at New York Now this summer. New York Now, which is August. I think it's like 10th, which is just for galleries and people that are shops. So it's a wholesale show specifically. But I really have like an open fall that I'm super looking forward to.
So they can find your work here.
Yes, they can find my work here. Yes, they can. Some new juicy pieces have landed here at Hecho Mano, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm not as awkward as I imagined.
Yeah. It was easy.
Yeah. It was pretty easy. Cool.